I'm just going to give you a very practical view, actually. You may be relieved, just to have some insights from what we've done in London so far. And, well, my slides are gone completely. I do need to show you some images, so just wait for a second to see if they come. Oh, they're coming back. Good. Are they going to stay there? Yeah? Good. So I'll start off by saying, why have we got a Smart London board? You might be curious to know why. These are the wrong slides, I'm afraid. The ones I gave you this morning, just bear with me a second. You know the ones I gave you this morning? But you will be relieved because I cut quite a few slides out. So. Now, okay, here we go. Why Smart London? Well, London was doing pretty well actually before the Olympics, and we didn't have any way of aggregating that or giving visibility to it. But in areas, for example, transport, we had the Oyster card. In policing, we were using data quite well. And then we had the Olympics in 2012, and we surprised ourselves in London and in Britain that they actually went quite well. And those of you who visited anything to do with the Olympics, you might have even been surprised as well that it didn't rain too much, and that people smiled and were friendly. And
it wasn't prepared, you remember?
Yes. And you know what? The best thing about it for me was that we won a lot of gold medals. And so I'll start off with why Smart London. And you'll notice there's a canoeist and there's a cyclist on the screen. Both of those sports athletes won gold medals. And they won gold medals. There were accelerometers in the blades of the paddles, measuring the intensity and cadence with which the canoeist was paddling. And there's a little box underneath the saddle here. The French, by the way, I hope there's no one French in the room that's going to be insulted by me saying this. The French accused us of having rounder wheels than other cyclists in the velodrome. Actually, what we did have was a little box collecting data about the athletes' performance and about the bike's performance. And that box came from analytics and kit that was built by McLaren, the Formula One motorsport company, with Imperial College working on BodyNet sensors, collecting data from athletes. And we did that in the water sports, in cycling, and a couple of other places. And we won a lot of medals. And so there's a direct connection between what happened on the pitch, so to speak, in the arena, and the use of data. There was also a lot of data collected to manage the Olympics for the policing and security and so forth. So we surprised ourselves. Now, the other thing that happened was that there was a realization that the economy was coming out of recession, and London appeared to be growing in a number of respects. And we now know that London's population is growing at quite a pace. It's the only major city in Europe with rapid population growth, 100,000 people a year we're having to accommodate. And the projection is that that is going to continue for some many years to come. We've just passed the highest population ever in London. This month, 5th of January, by the way, 8.6 million people. We're going to beat New York to 9 million people, if that's a great thing to do or not, I don't know. And we're heading off to 10 million in London. And our footprint isn't expanding massively outwards. This means that there's a great density and pressure on our infrastructure. And London's a good city, you know, in many ways. It's a city of finance, of course, but it's a city of arts and theatre, 300 theatres. It's a city of restaurants and a great city of science now. And I'll come on at the end and talk about why we can connect to universities, and particularly because of the agenda that you're running here with SUTD. The other thing is it's a very cosmopolitan and open city. 300 languages are spoken every day in our schools in London. 300 languages. And that means that we have not only a density of population, but we have a diversity of population. If you're developing apps or other services in the digital economy, sometimes it's helpful to have a marketplace where you've got immediacy, a variety that you can test ideas in, because experimentation needs to be close to the market to get feedback. And so there are a variety of other reasons why London seemingly was a good place. So the mayor decided that, having done the Olympics, we'd now try and be a little bit more systematic about being smart. London's also a very messy city, very chaotic city to try and do things in. There's the Greater London Authority, which, by the way, you should look at the size of the London economy. It would be the 9th largest European country in its own right. It's bigger than Sweden's economy. And the London Authority itself is a £20 billion a year business. So it has a big procurement supply chain, which can do things. It can buy things digitally. It can make a difference through demonstration projects. So the mayor wanted to do something from the Greater London Authority. But underneath or next to the Greater London Authority are 32 boroughs. Each one wants to be a smart borough, each one with a democratically elected borough leader. And then there's the City of London, which itself is an entity. So it's a messy, congested place to work in. And I was asked to chair a board and lead on developing a strategy. And we published what is called the Smart London Plan. And its main tenet is to use the creative power of new technologies to serve London and improve Londoners' lives. And I've been glad today to hear citizens mentioned at the beginning and at the end of our conversations. Technology is terribly important, but this plan is about London. And it's about London's infrastructure. And you can see the tube lines, you can see the new Crossrail. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening under the street. And then, of course, we've got some fantastic things going on in medical. Our iKnife, which is a new surgeon's tool, which is measuring what sort of cells are being cut out when removing a tumour, using a lot of data through chemo profiling to start to be predictive about the type of cancer. All sorts of things like that we wanted to connect to. The plan starts with Londoners at the core, and each one of these 7 areas has targets and data against them in terms of what we're trying to deliver. But each one is expressed in quite a soft way, I think you'll agree. These are non-technical ways of trying to express what we want to do. Londoners at the core. Well, there's a whole mechanism for digital engagement with Londoners that we talk about in our plan, in terms of giving access to those who are not on the internet or not enabled to be part of the digital economy at the moment. We measure those things. Access to open data. Steve, you gave a great talk on that. I'll just say a little bit more about what we're doing with open data. Leveraging London's research and technology and creative industries and talent, I'll speak to at the end. Bringing together these things through networks, and one of the things we can do on the board is catalyse other people's effort and try and shape the direction of travel. Enabling London to adapt and grow, because if we don't adapt and grow, London is going to slide, and I think the rest of the UK economy and perhaps the European economy will slide with it. And City Hall, that's the London government, has to do better. And so one of the things I try and do as an advisory board is hold the mayor's office to account. That's terribly difficult, but at least you can make a noise about things. You try telling Boris what to do. It's not an easy job. And then offering a smarter London experience. That comes back to the Olympics when people were smiling in London. There was a good experience. People enjoyed travelling and doing things for those few weeks, and we want to get to that experience and keep that consistently moving forward. So when we were talking about this, there were 1 or 2 things that I was worried about, because this word smart was being used everywhere. It's one of the 3 most hated words in marketing, sustainability and stakeholder being the other 2. I didn't want to call it the Smart London Board, but our friends in IPM, some of whom I'd worked with very closely on Smarter Planet and Smarter City, had really managed to bring about a common theme there across the world. And so we had this term. And what I wanted to do was see us target some realistic areas where we can make a difference. And there's an upside, which is the innovation side. Where can we do new things? And then there's a conformance side. How can we stop poor things happening in our city? And the conformance side was really about peak load and congestion. So peak, the four-letter word, is one of our key targets. How do we reduce peak load when densities are increasing and population size is increasing? And one of the nasty little things about peak load is that it doesn't just happen because of what is going on in one silo, in one infrastructure. We're seeing more and more perturbation because one infrastructure is butting up against another. Take electric vehicles, okay? Part of transport and part of electricity supply. How do you start to signal between what were previously separate run utilities? And so we're working on those, and we're building a model. Imperial College is heavily involved in this. Some colleagues in UCL are working with us on that, trying to create a data layer where we can actually mash data from different utilities and understand those perturbations. And there's a modeling piece of work that came from our previous work on energy systems in the city. Network utilities. London's an old city with a lot of utilities under the street that we can't see. One of the things that we wanted to do on the board was give evidence to what's happening, and we asked for evidence about what are the costs of disruption, or what are the costs of not doing things efficiently. And everyone knows the problems of digging up a street and road congestion that's caused. What we find in cities like London is that the street is dug up multiple times because there are multiple infrastructures in that street, and there's no coordination points between the different utility companies. And when we ask the utility companies why is that, they say because there's no map of what's under the tarmac. And so one of the challenges we've thrown out from the Smart London Board is a 3D digital model of everything under the streets of London. That's called a BIM model, and we are moving forward slowly. We put £1 million on the table, not a lot of money, for a challenge. Arup is moving forward, one of the big engineering companies, in developing this. And some parts of London are now being mapped better because we're doing lots of infrastructure work. And eventually, we will have a full digital 3D model of everything that's under our street, and there will be no excuse from, in fact, we'll be able to pass a law to say you'll be penalised if you don't consult and if you dig up the street multiple times. Hand in hand with that are things like, how do we deal with water? Now, we have a problem because 27% of our water leaks away because we've got old infrastructure under the street and we can't see it. The Olympics was a fantastic story about that because we had to pump a lot of water at night time to move it from one part of London to another. When you start putting pressure on these systems, you burst pipes. But there was a law passed that thou shalt not dig up the streets a month before the Olympics. So they had to do that very carefully. And one of our teams worked with NEC to put vibration monitors into some of the equipment so that we could measure where leaks were going to occur. And there's an acoustic monitoring system that is part now of a smart water system that we're rolling out. I'm just giving you a flavour of some practical projects here. This one I found very intriguing. Coming out of the Olympics, we were looking at traffic flows and congestion, and we found that light freight journeys were increasing. Light freight being small vans delivering small packages. And they were causing a lot of congestion and an increasing amount of congestion. And we looked at the trajectory, and they were set to increase even further. Why is that? Well, the key reason is that Londoners were increasingly doing their shopping online, but still buying physical products. We're still eating food, and some people are reading physical books from Amazon and elsewhere, but expecting instant gratification that those products would be arriving at their doorstep when they wanted them. And no one was coordinating that delivery process. So the modern digital world is causing congestion in the old physical world, but there's no way of getting those things to really configure. It's also causing pollution, and 4,000 Londoners are dying a year because of air pollution. and we've got some issues to deal with. So one of the targets for Smart London is to throw the data open to the private sector and to the research teams in universities to build a model so that we can figure out and innovate and develop new micro-consolidation centres, new ways of dealing with deliveries without the London government saying thou shalt not deliver packages between 7 in the morning and 10 in the morning or whenever it is, when congestion's occurring. And of course, it shouldn't, in my view, be the Mayor's office that makes a decision like that. We should have smart solutions out there in the logistics companies. So there's another £1 million project that we put a challenge on the table there. Steve, you mentioned the Open Data Institute, and we're working very closely with the Open Data Institute. The London Data Store and Dashboard, we're really proud of, actually. This is a live information site that you can go into now. If you go on today, you'll find there are more databases that are searched on there than when I took this screenshot. And this is a way of communicating how London is working to London's citizens and London's businesses. And you can pull rich data from this. You can also be an app developer and register to use that data. And since we launched this, in the transport area alone, we've had more than 450 apps developed by private sector entrepreneurs and companies. And some of those have become quite important in terms of helping customers and people use the city. So this is a giving life, if you will, to the open data story. And I think London's one of the cities that's on the front foot in making its data publicly available, giving a degree of transparency about how decisions are made. And if you're a researcher, you can go into this in quite a fine-grained way. You can get trend analysis, you can mash data together, you can build new apps, you can do new analytics. And this is starting to become quite a powerful set of materials to help London move forward. I've got two examples here. City Mapper. I don't know if any of you have yet used this app. It started in London about a year ago. Anyone know exactly? City Mapper is developed by some guys who were working in Google who left to set up this company, and they mash data together from some of those sources I've mentioned, I think 29 or 30 different databases. And in a 6-month period, it's been downloaded on half of all mobile devices in London, and it's really taken off. And this is the most powerful tool for, and I should say in near real time, managing your journey. It's adaptive as your journey takes place. It will tell you if there's a better and quicker way of getting there. And it's just rolling out. I checked to see if Singapore's on there. I think Singapore's coming. I think Hong Kong, New York, and these guys have really got a very impressive tool. The Whereabouts London tool is in a prototype form, and this allows you to make all sorts of inquiries about sort of geospatial activities in London and what's happening in those data sets. Is another analytic tool used by school children in their projects, used by businesses if they're looking at housing or what have you. And then there's the digital money side. Now, when you visit London next, if you don't want to use cash, you don't need to travel on our transport infrastructure. And the Oyster card, which we were proud of before the Olympics, is being thrown away, because even that creates friction, because you have to queue up to get your Oyster card charged. We're one of the first cities to move to near-field communication payment systems where you just walk on and off. And this is a big city, and we're rolling this out this year across the whole of the city, across the whole of our transport network. By the way, the cost of ticketing in transport is a big overhead to the Transport Authority, about 10%, I think. If you think about what a ticket is, it's a money conversion, isn't it? It's a form of exchange. You're taking £1 sterling and changing it for the right to travel in a piece of paper. And that causes friction because you have to queue to do it, and someone has to process the consequences. And we're just removing that friction point. And those of us who are going to travel with NFC devices are going to be able to travel at a reduced charge because we're costing less on the system. So that's one way of dealing with increased load on the system and peak load as well. We're not going to have to queue at ticket stores. We're working with Citigroup at the moment. We're just launching the updated Digital Money Index, which is a readiness index looking at countries across the world, including Singapore, as to whether their infrastructure is in place for these sort of things to happen. One of the consequences for me was having a symposium in January last year, and our students launching at Imperial College a thing called Yo-Yo, which is a digital money system across all of our restaurants and cafes, and I now never pay with anything other than walk through with my phone, which I charge up. And they've just rolled this out across London. And so this just shows you the power of having entrepreneurs working alongside those who are prepared to use data. So I'll just wrap up with a few other things. We just launched some innovation networks with the private sector leading these, one on smart districts and one on smart infrastructure, so that we can do some pilot projects and demonstration projects. And we're going to launch one this year in the medical technology area connected to data. Crossrail is Europe's biggest infrastructure project. It's a major, major piece of infrastructure, £17 billion worth, £15 billion worth, going mainly under central London, putting a new east-west, west-east rail infrastructure in place. We're just moving into the digital rail phase of that, and it's going to be one of our beacon projects. You'd probably be curious, we could talk all the rest of the time about Crossrail if you wanted. When we hand this over, we're going to hand over a digital asset as well as a physical asset. There'll be a full digital model of the whole thing for operational purposes, including sensors everywhere. So when you walk onto a platform as a digital passenger, your app will tell you where to stand because the sensors in the seats will tell you where there are vacant seats and which part of the train to stand on, which part of the platform to stand near. So we're looking at surprising the world that London can use digital in ways that no one else is doing by 2018 when we open this major facility. In terms of smart districts, the Olympic Park is one, and our Imperial College Olympic Park with UCL and others, our Imperial College new campus in West London is another. This is a 25-acre innovation district that we're constructing at the moment with a lot of startups, and we're putting superfast broadband and a number of other digital assets into this region. And then just to connect that back to the academic world, you will have probably read about Tech City, and the startup communities that are really moving ahead in London, that are attracting a lot of investment from venture funders and from the corporate world. Google has just invested $1 billion in a new R&D facility in London. And the government and the universities have put money into what we call catapults. We've got data science institutes. Tech City is the region where this all started. And the Smart London Board is working together with these private sector and other institutions to help build an entrepreneurial community that can do those apps, that can do new things with city data. And we're starting to see the same with biomedical. We've got 3 wonderful teaching hospital networks in London, covering off at about 9 million patients, which is a big marketplace. And of course, the future, the next 30 years, will be about the melding together of digital and bioindicators, biomedical engineering, and so on. And we're really trying to move that forward. Smart London is helping with that. When we launched it at one of our campuses at Hammersmith Imperial College campus with Boris, we suggested that we should do a digital image of his brain. I can tell you, if you do an analysis of the Mayor of London's brain and it's Boris Johnson, you get a lot of publicity. So it was a good stunt for us. and that really connects us now to be able to talk about Science and Technology City in the Golden Triangle. And we've got a lot more assets coming in. I won't go through them all. On the right-hand side, I mentioned 1 or 2 of them, that are enabling us to connect data with new ideas, with markets, and with the facilities to do something about that. The lubricant being money. You need venture funding. You need people who are going to take risks. And that really is the story. I think we've heard about some of the implications of privacy and so on. I will say one about government. The organisational structure of government is not right for this. I mean, having siloed departments, an energy department, a transport department, and so on, is really not that helpful when you're looking at integrative activities on the horizontal. So, you know, people like myself are chipping away saying, when is the London government going to get this and start to integrate its own functions so it can work better? Many more things one could say, but I think I've taken enough time. And I hope I've given you a flavour there of what we're trying to do to make London an even better city. I will say it's rather chaotic. No one can pull a lever and see something move the other end. But I've even been surprised myself at how many institutions and projects are starting to play in this space. Thank you.